Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'm going to be reviewing Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So I'll just start off by saying this review is going to have a few spoilers in it. There's some things I really want to talk about. I really have been a fan of Godzilla for a while. I used to love watching the films when I was a little kid. And there's some homages to old Godzilla, and it did some things that I felt like the 2014 film didn't do for Godzilla fans. It had some fan service moments that I personally really enjoyed, so I want to talk about some of those. So Godzilla, King of the Monsters takes place 5 years after the first film from 2014, and it is in the same timeline. It's related to the same film. It is a sequel to it. You get some of the returning characters, and basically what's happening in this film is a new monster is introduced. It's called Monster Zero, and this is actually an older monster that they renamed, I'm sure, for Western audiences to make it a little easier. I grew up knowing him as King Ghidorah. It's one of my favorite monsters in the whole Godzilla universe. I had the little foot-tall toys, if you remember those. I had those in the 90s. I had Godzilla, I had him, I had Mothra, and I used to make them fight all the time. And this movie feels like a love letter to the kids that played with the Godzilla toys that smashed them together and wanted to have the ultimate team up with all the monsters fighting each other. And it felt like how a Godzilla movie should feel, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean that the movie isn't without its flaws. But first I'd like to talk about the positive. I thought this movie had some of the best visuals in a monster movie I'd seen in a long time. I know some people like to complain about the fact that a lot of the shots are in the dark, and I know that is to cover up the CG. There's so much visual effects in this film. Almost all the movie is CG, obviously, with the giant monsters fighting, but I thought they looked really good. And I thought it had some of the coolest shots I've seen in these type films. For one, I thought Monster Zero had some of the coolest shots I've seen in a long time, especially when the electricity would flow through him and he'd shoot it back out, and you had the storm and everything swirling around. It was so ominous and so powerful, and just the scale of that monster worked really well. It jumped off the screen. This is definitely a movie I would recommend seeing in IMAX if you can, seeing it on the big screen. It is a theater movie. It is a popcorn movie. I liked Godzilla's character model in 2014. I like it now. I think it works really well. It kind of strays a little bit away from the original look of Godzilla, but I still think it is enough to what it looked like originally to still be really interesting. And it's not a man in a suit, so it's going to look a little more lizard-like, a little more bulky, and I really liked it. I thought him using his powers is one of the coolest things, and just having that sound of him showing up and his roar and when he's using the atomic breath and all that stuff, it looked great. Those two characters fighting, those two monsters going at it, was something I wanted since I was a little kid to see on a modern, big screen, big budget film, and I got what I wanted, and I have to say I was definitely satisfied. I saw the marketing, I was really pumped for it, and it delivered on those aspects that I really wanted it to. Also, one of the things that it did filmmaking-wise that I really found interesting, other than those really epic shots, was you see when it goes down to the ground and you're kind of looking at the characters, it gives almost like a handy cam, like a handheld shot of it, which gave me real Cloverfield vibes, and I love Cloverfield. So mixing that with the epic wide shots and the on the ground kind of manic trying to focus on it and the news footage, I thought it worked really well. I really loved the monsters and the monster fights in this film. In addition to those two monsters, you have the introduction in this film of Mothra, who is obviously a very old Godzilla character, one of my favorites as well. And I thought the introduction shot when it first comes out of its cocoon was excellent. I thought so many visuals with that character, with that monster in particular, were really, really well done. I can't express how much I enjoyed watching these things happen on screen. I loved it. It's something I've always wanted, like I said, and I think they nailed that aspect of the film. Like I said, they pay a few little homages. I'm sure there's some things that I missed in the film, but one thing that I really liked as someone who has watched some of the older Godzilla movies is that you have a little callback to, how Mothra originally worked with the two twins, the singing, the control, all that stuff. You have a Japanese scientist who is from the lineage of a bunch of Japanese twins, and they show the pictures, and I thought they were going to go there with it. I thought you were going to actually see it happen like in the older movies, but I like that they threw that little, if you know that and you recognize the twin thing, it was kind of cool seeing that. So it was kind of for the Godzilla fans that really knew some of the older stuff. I have to say, the negatives in the film for me mostly all fall on the human characters. I don't think they're terrible by any stretch of imagination. I don't think they're joke characters. I think that some of them actually had some really compelling arcs. In particular, Kyle Chandler's character, I thought, had a good story. How he starts off where he's hating Godzilla because, it caused the death of his son. And then having that come full circle where he kind of has to help bring Godzilla back. And you're seeing that shift between the two of hating Godzilla and realizing that you really do need Godzilla, and he is on your side, and it is important to understand this balance. And that's one of the things from this film that called back to the old Godzilla films as well, having that balance, having between Godzilla and the humans having to work together. You don't mess with him, he doesn't mess with you, and he helps you protect the Earth. And when you tip that balance too far to one side, that's when things get bad. And I liked that part of the film. It kind of calls back to, protecting the environment and having those subtle cues in the film, but still at its core being an action monster movie that delivers on those levels. So the human character that really bothered me the most was the character played by Vera Farmiga. I thought that her motivations that didn't really make a ton of sense. The other villain in the film had more of an eco-terrorist vibe. He knew what he was doing would cause basically the end of humanity. He wanted to cleanse the Earth, wipe everybody out, just basically start anew. And she had this warped idea that, if I release all the Titans and I'm going to be the one to do this, it's going to have this, cohesive effect where everybody's going to come together and the monsters and the humans are going to live in harmony and the world will be better and they'll bring back. But none of that made sense. And then when the bad things happen that she caused, she seems confused by it. Like, why did this go so poorly? I mean, I honestly didn't know what she thought was going to happen, and I thought that character felt pointless. If you would have taken that character out, just stuck with the main villain inside the movie, I think it would have been a little more compelling for that storyline in particular. I also think the movie did a decent job of not taking itself too seriously. I think at times it took its moments to try and be emotional and be serious. Those fell flat for me for the most part, but I thought that overall the story they were trying to tell was compelling enough and it was interesting enough that I didn't hate when they had to switch back to the humans. I know at its core this movie is going to be about the monsters, and it should be about the monsters. I mean, it's a Godzilla movie, and I think they handled that aspect really well, but the human aspect, I think they dropped the ball just a little bit. It could have been tweaked a little more, be a little more interesting in my opinion. So if I were to rate this movie, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. I really liked it. I liked it more than the average person. I think it's definitely a movie, if you're a Godzilla fan, you'll really like it. If you want to go see it, I'd say definitely go see it on the big screen. It has some really good sound editing, visuals, just a lot going on that's really enjoyable to see these titans just clashing on the big screen. And let me know, how did you feel about the film? Did you think that it lived up to the hype? Do you think it was a good Godzilla movie? I'm interested to see, because a lot of people seem to be a little up or down on this movie. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.